Friends and honored guests, please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please silence your mobile devices. Our program is about to begin. Please turn your attention to the screens for a special message from the Prime Minister of Israel.
Greetings from Jerusalem to all of you in Washington, in the General Assembly of the Jewish Federations of North America. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing since the start of the war. Not only for the money you raised, although that's appreciated, but more for the solidarity you embody. We stand together against the genocidal noose of death that Iran is trying through its proxies to put on us, and Iran itself has attacked us. We stand tough and we fight back. We stand together against anti-Semitism on America's streets and the streets of Amsterdam. We stand together because we are one. More than any time before in our history, we are one. We are one family, one people, with one destiny. You know that, we know that, and I congratulate you for standing up for the truth, standing up for Israel, standing up for the Jewish people.
Please welcome the National Campaign Chair of the Jewish Federations of North America, David Heller.
I want to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to each of you. This has been a year like no other. Together, we have achieved incredible things, raising close to $1 billion for the Israel Emergency Campaign and maintaining the strength of our annual community campaigns. Your dedication, your compassion, and your resolve have kept Jewish life flourishing both here and across the globe. For this, I am deeply grateful. In addition to our vital work at home, I want to keep the war in Ukraine top of mind. Many of us have personal or ancestral ties to Eastern Europe, including Ukraine, where vibrant Jewish communities once thrived. Since the Russian invasion began, the consequences have been staggering. Over 10 million people have been displaced, making this one of the largest humanitarian crises since World War II. And yet, amidst this hardship, we've mobilized to bring hope and aid to those in need. Through our historic partners, the Jewish Agency for Israel, JDC, World Ort, and with the invaluable work of Chabad and so many others, we've been able to coordinate essential resources, food, shelter, medical care, and secure passage for those seeking refuge. Thousands have even made Aliyah, building a new life in Israel. So far, we have raised and allocated over $90 million, reaching more than 500,000 people. With our help, 180,000 Ukrainians have been able to find safety here in the United States. This is what collective action looks like. This is the power of unity. Despite the war and its devastation, a robust Jewish community remains in Ukraine. There are JCCs and Hillels, Hebrew schools and day schools, signs of resilience that give hope for a future where Jewish life in Ukraine can flourish. It is this future that we are working to protect. Just as we support Jews wherever they are in the world, but as winter approaches, we know the challenges only intensify. Cold weather brings suffering to those lacking electricity, heat, food, and medical care, all of which are dangerously in short supply. Russia's continued targeting of Ukraine's infrastructure has made survival a daily struggle for millions. Our help is still needed more now than ever. We have seen what we can accomplish together, but work is far from over. Our continued mission is to support existing infrastructure and to inspire hope. This means investing in education, in mental health, in a cultural resilience, helping people maintain a sense of normalcy in the face of unimaginable disruption. Each action we take, each dollar we raise, each hand we extend, these are the things that will help Ukrainian Jewish community survive and thrive. And so I ask you to keep these individuals, these families in your thoughts, and keep everything that you're doing in your power to help support them. Because our efforts are more than just a response to a crisis. They are an affirmation of our enduring bond with every Jew, wherever they live around the globe. Thank you for being here, thank you for standing together, and thank you above all for your chesed and your compassion. Together we can bring hope, even in the darkest of times, to those who need it most. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce Annie Sandler, President of the American Joint Distribution Committee, the world's leading Jewish humanitarian organization. Annie has been deeply involved in the rebirth of Jewish life in Romania and has been honored by its government and its Jewish community. Also, as a strong supporter of Israel, Annie has helped bolster the Jewish state's social service sector for more than 2 decades. Please join me in welcoming Annie Sandler to the stage.
Thank you, David, and thank you all. Good morning. This year has been marked by extraordinary needs, but it has also been marked by extraordinary leadership. While I stand here today as the president of JDC, I am also a proud, endowed Lion of Judah and leader of the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater. My leadership represents the incredible collaboration across Jewish organizations, the collaboration that makes the impact we see possible. Today, your leadership provides more help to the Jewish world than at any other time since World War II. And JDC proudly serves as the boots on the ground, aiding hundreds of thousands of people touched by far-reaching crisis. In Israel, our social service programs help more than 1 million vulnerable Israelis every week. And in this past year of the war, we have directly aided more than 450,000 of the hardest hit Israelis, like Aharon and Tamara, an elderly couple that live in Kiryat Bialik. Aharon is permanently connected to an oxygen machine, and they cannot leave their home during a rocket attack. They rely on JDC caseworkers to care for them and our critical first aid supplies to ensure their safety. The supplies include flashlights, chargers, radios, and a whistle that they need for emergency attention when at all possible, just like this one. And of course, our work extends to 70 countries around the world, all the way to Ukraine, where for decades we have been aiding the neediest Jews and building Jewish identity. When the world calls, we answer. And just like the whistle for Aharon and Tamara, it is all of you in this room today who ensure that we can continue to be the voice for the voiceless and that we can call attention where it's most needed. I'd like for you all to meet Anastasia, one of 50,000 Ukrainians who have endured and survived the devastating conflict. Thanks to your support.
Few hours ago, before we started our recording, there was an explosion really not far from the office, and some people died. This is what we experience every day in Ukraine: economic instability, damaged infrastructure, and limited resources. Some people don't have basic services like electricity, water, food. Especially in winter, these challenges are extremely hard because the most vulnerable people are old ones. During the second week of the conflict, my family forced me to leave. It's been exactly 2 years since I returned to Ukraine, and I have never regretted this decision. There are times when I'm afraid for my life, but I love what I do. We remain committed and will not give up.
Over the past 2 years, the Jewish world mobilized, quickly delivering food, medicine, and fuel to over 52,000 elderly and vulnerable Jews in Ukraine. But each day, more people fall in poverty as prices skyrocket, and for many, the work we do, their only hope for survival. When the crisis in Ukraine began, it was all of you who stepped in. It was your leadership that allowed people to evacuate to safer areas, that sent buses across borders. And while I helped families as they boarded those buses, offering a hand to hold, a smile of hope, it was you making it possible. This ongoing support has come to mean so much more than shelters and food. It means that people have food and winter clothing, allowing them to survive, to live in safety and dignity despite the unrelenting crisis. Our JCC and youth programs are not only providing physical safety, but also creating spaces where people can celebrate their Judaism, hope, and learn. And even during a war with Jewish federations behind us, we have achieved that once felt impossible in Ukraine: being Jewish in Ukraine. And Jewish community programs give us strength and purpose that sustains us. Even explosions shake our streets and our daily lives. And the conflict endures, winters grow colder, and life in Ukraine becomes more precarious. I ask you to remember us. We may not be in headlines, but we're still here, living, working, supporting each other. On behalf of everyone still in war zone in Ukraine, we thank you, and we ask, please remember us. Thank you.
Please welcome the co-chair of the 2024 General Assembly, Gary Torgow.
Good morning, everyone. It was just yesterday morning that I had the privilege to stand before you at the opening plenary. It is amazing how in the past 24 hours so much has been accomplished. After weeks and weeks of planning by the incredible Jewish Federation of North America's team, led of course by Julie Platt, our wonderful chair. Eric Fingerhut, our terrific CEO. And the great Shira Hutt, who is working so hard for the JFNA. And an amazing array of accomplished professionals who created one of the most inspiring, moving, and memorable General Assemblies in the Federation's history. New proclamations were declared. New promises of greater and greater assistance to the State of Israel were announced. A roadmap for the post-October 7th future of the Jewish people was charted. New goals were created and critical issues were debated. We heard from extraordinary leaders. We listened to voices and song that stirred our hearts. It was, for the uplifted delegates from around North America, an opportunity to create a sense of unity that will carry us from Washington, D.C. today to the streets and neighborhoods of our cities and our communities. Each of us hail from our locale, 146 Federation strong, but more and more we recognize that we must be nothing less than a unified and cohesive collective, and helping to realize the same goal of a stronger, more vibrant, more connected, and more unified Jewish people. We have come to internalize that when a Federation building is vandalized in one city, when a Jew is physically struck on the campus of one of our universities, when hateful attacks occur in their city, It is an assault on all of us in our city. The particular name of the college campus no longer matters. The exact location is blurred by the hateful rhetoric that is meant for all Jews, no matter where they are and where they reside. For us and our communities, the answer lies in our strength, in our unity, in our responsible stewardship of our neighborhoods and our communities. It is our promise to one another to never despair, to continue to stand together, Ki'ish echad b'lev echad, one people with one heart. Although we are in 2024, as was mentioned throughout this conference, we continue to hearken back thousands of years to the generation that introduced our father Abraham, a man who would create a worldwide foundation of kindness, love, and unity, which continues to be the example for every generation into the future. Abraham's legendary kindness was known far and wide. He and his wife Sarah welcomed into their tent anyone who needed respite, help, or care, or uplifting or shelter. They served everyone equally, notwithstanding their race, their color, their ethnicity, or their economic stratum. Everyone was welcome and everyone was equal in the eyes of man and confirmed in the eyes of God. Abraham and Sarah provided every passerby with a place to rest, a place to relax, a kind-hearted embrace, and a nourishing meal. They were the original umbrella organization for every human being who crossed their threshold. The Torah commentators ask with wonderment, what was the impetus and inspiration for this remarkable couple to dedicate and devote their lives and their largesse to full-time love and generosity, to community building, which ultimately led Abraham to become known worldwide as the forefather of all religions, the father of every nation? The remarkable answer the commentators give lies in one mind-blowing moment that occurred in history. It is an incredible chance encounter that occurred on the streets of Mesopotamia between Abraham and the son of Noah, whose name was Shem, who was still alive 400 years after the flood. In that historic encounter, Abraham asked his forefather Shem, "In what merit were you and your family able to survive alone during that disastrous flood on the ark?" Noah's son Shem answered remarkably, "Our family was saved in the merit of the kindness and charity that we performed on the ark." "How," asked Abraham, "could you perform charity on the ark if there were no poor people there amongst you?" "No," Shem answered, "it wasn't kindness and charity to ourselves. It was rather a warm embrace and daily nourishment to the animals who were with us on the ark." Abraham, the commentators tell us, was moved and astounded and understood with clarity the lesson Shem had taught him. If the reward for feeding animals merited such salvation in life, how much more so if an individual provides kindness and love and a warm embrace to God's human creatures? Abraham understood the merit a person can earn in the eyes of heaven for treating humankind with dignity and devotion and equality, which is the way the Almighty treats us. And therefore, Abraham's legacy, because of that critical encounter, became one of justice and charity and advocacy for the downtrodden, the underprivileged, that were to seek his help. This set a precedent for all humanity for all time. His example has taught us that real righteousness involves achrayut, taking responsibility for the welfare of others. As we conclude this remarkable General Assembly, we remind ourselves how critical is our responsibility to our brothers and sisters in our own communities, in Israel and across the world. In the near future, with God's help, with a hopeful peace and prosperity in the land of Israel, across the Middle East, and on every continent where Jews reside, we most assuredly will look back on this moment with the Jewish Federations of North America and say proudly, we each did our part. We made a difference. We did not shirk our responsibility, and we did it together as one person with one heart. Each of you, through your tremendous efforts creating kindness and unity and love and the cherishing of every human being, you will each be designated as heroes of our generation. Do not take that moniker lightly. It is true, and it is your place in this incredible times that we live through. We look forward to hearing and seeing all the progress that emanated from this outstanding gathering and the continued strength and vitality and unity that are at the heart of everything we do. May you have safe travels back to your communities, and we thank all of you for your camaraderie, your dear friendship, and dedication to the safety, security, and growth of the Jewish people, the State of Israel, and every community across North America. In the merit of all of your efforts, all of the care, all of the concern, all of the love, and all of the planning, and all the embrace that are born out of this remarkable General Assembly, may each and every one of you receive an abundance of heavenly blessings for you, your wonderful families, and the entire Jewish people. God bless each and every one of you. Shalom and Am Yisrael Chai.
Representing Jewish Changemakers, please welcome Morgan Cooper.
Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Cooper, and I am one of the Changemakers GA co-chairs. The Changemakers Fellowship is a 6-week intensive learning experience designed to help young professionals bridge the early gaps between school and work and the entry to the next position. I am so honored to introduce Bari Weiss today so that we can all hear her timely and inspiring message. But first, I want to recognize how incredible it is to be here with so many inspiring leaders. Over 100 young Jewish adults ages 20 to 30 have traveled here for this year's General Assembly. We come from 27 states, 3 Canadian provinces, and right here in DC. In total, with having 2,500 changemakers go through the session over the last several years. Each of us have taken time away from work and school and our families to be here, committed to learning, strengthening our leadership skills, and building meaningful connections with others. We all share the hope and determination to make a difference and to make our voices heard as part of the up-and-coming Jewish Federation leaders. To all of you here, I want to say thank you for building a community that champions young leaders and our potential. With your guidance and partnerships, we are building a more vibrant, inclusive, and resilient Jewish future. And now it is my great privilege to introduce Bari Weiss. Bari has shown so many others in our community how to inspire, demonstrating leadership in both thought and action. In her books and articles, Bari has continuously pushed boundaries, challenged prevailing narratives, and advocated for the free exchange of ideas, even when those ideas are uncomfortable or unpopular. Bari is a former editor and writer of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and now the editor of her own media platform, The Free Press. Please welcome me in joining Bari Weiss.
When did you know? Looking back, now that we're on the far side, I wonder, when did you realize that things had changed? When did you know that the things we had taken for granted were suddenly out of reach? That the norms that felt as certain as gravity had disappeared? That the institutions that had launched our grandparents in this country had turned hostile to our children? When did you notice that what had once been steady was now shaky ground, Did you look down to see if your own knees were the ones that were trembling? When did you realize that we were not immune from history, but living directly inside of it? When did you see that our world was actually the world of yesterday, and that a new one with far fewer certainties, one where everything is up for grabs, was already coming into being? Maybe it was September 11th, 2001, when Islamist terrorists murdered 3,000 Americans. Maybe you noticed in the days afterward, as my friend Jonathan Rosen did, that an explosion of Jew hatred seemed to have ridden on the contrails of the airplanes that the jihadists had turned into weapons of mass destruction and aimed at the heart of American civilization. Or maybe it was the Second Intifada, in which everyday places, Mike's Place, Sabaro's, Cafe Moment, the Dolphinarium, became symbols for slaughterhouses, even as few of our would-be allies said their names. Or maybe it was on February 1st, 2002, when Al-Qaeda beheaded the journalist Daniel Pearl in Pakistan, as he spoke his final words, "I am a Jew. My mother is a Jew." Or maybe it wasn't until the Shabbat morning of October 27, 2018, when a neo-Nazi gunned down 11 Jews at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh while shouting, "All Jews must die." Or maybe it was the shooting 6 months later at the Chabad of Poway, because for Hannah Kay, who witnessed the murder of her mother Lori on that day, it surely was. Or maybe it was January of 2022 when a gunman held the congregants of Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas, hostage. Or maybe it was before. Maybe it was the bombing of the Amia Center in Buenos Aires, the terror attack at the Chabad of Mumbai, the school shooting in Toulouse, or the murder of Sarah Halimi, an older woman who was thrown out of her apartment window in Paris. Maybe you don't remember, but French prosecutors decided to drop the murder charges against her killer, who had shouted Allahu Akbar, because those prosecutors said that he had been smoking weed. Maybe it was the rise of Jeremy Corbyn in England, or white supremacists marching through Charlottesville with their tiki torches. Maybe it was the anti-Semites at the helm of the Women's March, or maybe it was the social consequences you suffered when you dared to notice them. Maybe, as it was for so many, it was the morning of October 7th, when Hamas terrorists came across the border into southern Israel on foot and on motorbike and by truck and by car and by paraglider to murder and maim anyone they could find. Maybe it was the fact that they had come armed with maps that had been drawn by Palestinians with Israeli work permits, who told them which home had children in it, who told them who owned a dog. But maybe even that wasn't enough. That was still over there. It wasn't here. Maybe it took until October 8th, when in Times Square, while terrorists were still roaming in Israel, people were cheering, exhilarated, jubilated at the news of Jewish death. Or perhaps it was the moral inversion in the days that followed, the Chicago chapter of Black Lives Matter using the symbol of a hand glider, a symbol of mass murder, as a sign of liberation. Or maybe it was when the heads of Harvard and Penn and MIT, who run schools that cater to the most minute of microaggressions, could not answer in the affirmative when they were asked if calling for the genocide of Jews qualified as bullying and harassment. Or maybe it was the fact that professors and Broadway producers were the ones that were tearing down posters of women and children and babies held captive by Hamas. Maybe it was after October 8th when you organized the march, and none of the people who post about being allies showed up. Maybe it was the physical attacks on Jewish students at Tulane, at the University of Pittsburgh, or at DePaul. Maybe it was the school shootings in Toronto and Montreal. Or maybe it was the now near daily assaults on the streets of Brooklyn against the most visible members of our community. But maybe it was more subtle than that. Maybe it was the quiet purging of proud Jews, like the novelist Alyssa Albert, who refuses to be quiet about Israel from the arts, from museum boards, from human rights groups. Maybe it was watching what your children were learning in their ethnic studies class about Israel and about the history of the Jewish people. Maybe it was the mobs that gathered outside of Michael Rappaport's show in Chicago, calling him a racist Zionist, or the venue in Chicago that canceled a Matisyahu concert because they claimed they couldn't guarantee his safety. Or maybe you knew when you saw that an Orthodox Jewish man was shot while walking to shul a few Shabbats ago in Rogers Park in Chicago, only to be offered thoughts and prayers from the city's mayor. Or maybe it took the events of this past week, when Jews were hunted in the streets of Amsterdam, a pogrom in 21st century Europe. They called it a Jew hunt, and they texted about it. In one of the recordings, a victim of the attack jumps into one of Amsterdam's canals to escape his assailants. He is forced to say, "Free Palestine," as he treads water. His assailants laugh and jeer and call him a cancer Jew. Soon, I'm sure, Columbia students are going to hold a protest on behalf of the pogromists. And if that seems like an exaggeration, consider the fact that yesterday, on Veterans Day, a group of them were camped out on the quad holding a memorial service for Sinwar. Now, perhaps at the time, each one of these discrete events felt like a nightmare or a flu, something terrible to be endured until in good time it would pass, until things would go back to normal, as they surely would. But those in this room whose parents or grandparents fled Tehran and Moscow and Beirut and Baghdad, they knew better. The Persians, the Russians, the Cubans in our community, they never didn't know. And that is because they come from a world where to be Jewish required knowing. They understood tyranny and threats to freedom because they had lived it. And they have been alive to the threats against us and against liberty that left too many comfortable American Jews sleepwalking over the past decades. I want to suggest to you that the task for us in this moment is to learn this state of mind and this state of being, the resilience, the vigilance, the mental strength, the courage, and the pride, not just to survive, but to thrive in this new world that we are living in. We must learn from those who never had the luxury of losing their instinct for danger. And that begins by articulating first to yourself and then out loud what you know, because only then can we get serious about what being in this new world requires of us. If you find yourself often asking the people around you, "Can you believe?" Well, you need to ask yourself why reality is still catching you off guard. What little lies, what lies of omission, or lies told in the name of being politically correct or polite are you telling yourselves, even today? Here's one. We told ourselves that multiculturalism and unfettered immigration were good because we had benefited from both, because they had made our own lives possible. But we need to get serious about their limitations, because what we're seeing right now in Europe is that people from profoundly anti-Semitic countries do not check their belief systems at the border of the Western world. Do you want to see what happens when people are too scared, too cowed to discuss that problem plainly? When they are too worried to say plainly that some cultures are more tolerant and inclusive than others? Look at what is happening to the Jewish community in Amsterdam. Look at what is happening to the Jewish community in London. And if you think what just happened in the Netherlands can never happen here, I urge you to take a very, very hard look at our history. We also need to get serious right now about who our allies really are, and to be able to say that some of the best defenders of our community, like Richie Torres and Douglas Murray, are not Jews themselves, but that some of the biggest sellouts of our community are. We need to level with ourselves. We need to level with ourselves, even if it's in private, and acknowledge that many of the institutions that have turned against our community were funded by members of our own community. Walk through a museum whose staff would never hire a Zionist curator and look at the names above the galleries. Walk in a university right now and look at the names on the buildings. Look at what's being taught there. How did this happen? We need to ask that as we build new institutions to make sure that we prevent that from ever happening again. We need to say out loud what we know to be true about different ideologies that are very chic right now in American life. One of them is this: a worldview that measures fairness by equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. A worldview that says that merit and excellence are suspicious is a worldview that is fundamentally hostile to us and to every single value that we stand for. We need to be able to say that the politics of the mob, from whatever side of the aisle, will always be dangerous for us, and that those who insist right now that the voice of the people or the voice of God are wrong. We need to talk about a legacy press that our community still reads religiously, but which lies about the things that we know to be true. The legacy press would have you believe that the hunt for Jews in Amsterdam was just a scuffle between football hooligans. That is no less a lie than suggesting that the phrase Sig Heil merely means Hail Victory. We need to say out loud that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, full stop, and the idea that we need to indulge in panel discussions to debate that inside the Jewish community is perverse. We need to take the phrase globalize the Intifada seriously. It is not a fun rally chant, it is a call for violence against our community. What this moment requires is the truth, the hard, uncomfortable truth. It means not backing down from telling it to yourself and to others. It means holding your leaders to account when they fail to deliver, and not just following them blindly out of convenience or convention. It means realizing that good ideas and good people, they don't just win on their own. They need others to elevate them, to defend them, and to promote them. If all of this, if this moment that we're in feels deeply uncomfortable, that is because it is. As my friend Alana Newhouse says, if it feels like the end, that's because all beginnings do. If it feels like the end, that's what beginnings feel like. And all new beginnings feel uncomfortable. But we have choice in this end and in this beginning. We have agency, we have power, and we have the blessing to live in America. So we can continue to offer bromides about how the arc of history bends towards justice, and how politics is a pendulum that naturally reaches its midpoint, and about history is a story of progress. Or we can accept that none of that is actually true, that we bend the arc of history, that the pendulum can go in all kinds of radical directions, and about history is never written in advance, that we write it. We can accept what this moment requires and figure out how to forge a world anew. My hero, and I'm sure many of yours, Natan Sharansky, said that there were two kinds of Jews in the Soviet Union. There were the Jews, and these were the majority maybe, who wanted to save the world. And they became communists and ended up enslaved and enslaving half the world. And then there were the Jews who wanted to save other Jews, who wanted to save themselves in their families. And these are the ones that we remember and elevate and honor as the refuseniks, the dissidents who refused to go along. They were the ones who ended up bringing down the Soviet Union and saving the free world. History is back. The old world, the old normal, it is not returning. It is on us to build the new one, and it is on us to ensure that it is free. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please welcome the president of the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, Winnie Sandler Grinspoon.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor for me to be here today, looking out at so many dedicated and resilient leaders, professionals, and partners. At a time when our communities are facing the tremendous challenges we just heard about, it can be really hard to focus on the good. But I'm incredibly fortunate I have the privilege of doing just that. I'm thrilled to announce the launch of the Grinspoon Amber Awards, which will recognize and honor remarkable professionals working within the Jewish community. This initiative is close to our hearts at the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. My father-in-law, Harold Grinspoon, created the foundation with one goal: to engage Jews in the richness of the Jewish tradition. Harold believes that for Judaism to continue to impact Jews and society, Jewish life has to be actively cultivated. He has dedicated himself to this goal, pouring his resources and his boundless energy into bringing the joys of Judaism to as many people as possible. But Harold will say, he'll be the first to say, that he didn't do it alone. He couldn't do it alone. And so these awards are Harold's way of saying thank you. Thank you to the professionals who make this work possible. The Grinspoon Amber Awards will honor those who have demonstrated outstanding work and outstanding contributions to the Jewish community. But these awards are going to be more about just celebrating excellence. They're about shining a light on the dedicated professionals who day after day are building stronger, more resilient Jewish communities. These are the people who rarely seek the spotlight, but who deserve to be up on this stage receiving all of our applause. When we considered who could be the right partner for this endeavor, the Jewish Federations of North America was the obvious choice. It is thanks to the Grinspoon Foundation's partnership with so many of you, so many local Jewish federations across North America, that, for example, PJ Library is the beloved and far-reaching program that it is. And it is through our work with so many federations on the Life and Legacy program that together, together we are ensuring the future viability and future of Jewish communal organizations and communities. We at the Grinspoon Foundation are inspired every day by the creativity and the passion and the commitment of the professionals we get to work with at federations and at so many Jewish organizations in our communities. And like us, JFNA understands that their power comes from the people who make Jewish community their life's work. JFNA is deeply committed to supporting professionals in countless ways, and we are thrilled to partner with them on this award. So starting next year, at this very gathering, we will recognize 5 exceptional individuals with a Grinspoon Amber Award. Now, in addition to a lovely cash prize, each of those winners will then get to pay it forward by selecting 2 other individuals, 2 other professionals to receive peer recognition grants. For us, this model reflects our belief that true leadership is lifting others up. So here's my ask. I know all of you know someone who fits this very description, a person who works in the Jewish community, who has gone above and beyond, who has shown courage and integrity, who has achieved something remarkable, or who has bridged a divide that others couldn't. So please nominate them. You'll find all the eligibility information and the details on our website. Thank you, and may the Grinspoon Amber Awards remind us all to uplift and to celebrate those of us who lead with purpose, dedication, and vision. And I look forward to seeing you all here next year at this GA for the first awarding of these honors. Thank you very much.
Please welcome back to the stage our scholar-in-residence, Michal Biton.
We are about to conclude this amazing conference, and I want to prepare us for the world outside. Yesterday, I spoke about the remarkable journey that we are all in, and how commitment to Jewish peoplehood, to mishpacha, is required for this journey. Today, I want to share one characteristic that Jewish tradition tells us is critical, not only to survive, but to thrive on this journey. Courage. In the last few decades, Jews have enjoyed unprecedented comfort, security, and acceptance in liberal democracy. In broad terms, after the Holocaust, we can say that we Jews got a nice long break from Jewish history, from the kind of anti-Semitism that characterized the Jewish experience. And so, many of us forgot. We forgot that for our ancestors to be a Jew required understanding that our existence in this world would be a lonely one, that it might be uncomfortable or unsafe, that it would ask us to be different, to stand apart, to be unpopular. For millennia, Jews who came before us stood with their heads high, facing hate, because they knew their Judaism was precious and extraordinary. They knew they held a diamond in their hand, one they were meant to protect, to treasure, and to pass on to their children at all costs. With the blessings, opportunities, and success of the last few decades, we forgot how hard it has been for most of history to be a Jew. But as Bari mentioned, history is back. Jewish history is back, and it asks us to find new courage. Thankfully, we have examples in our tradition that help us with this. We've heard so much at this conference about Abraham, and in that journey of Abraham and Sarah, they were asked to stand apart. The Talmud says Abraham was known as Avraham HaIvri, Abraham the Hebrew, because the word Ivri comes from me'ever, on the other side. The entire world stood on one side worshiping idols, and Abraham and Sarah stood apart on the other side. That took great courage. In another example, we can look at Moses, who grew up as a prince in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth, by stature, by luxury. He could have stayed there. But one day, he saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew slave, and Moses understood at that moment that to be good requires the courage to stand up to evil. We don't need to go all the way back to the Bible to find examples of Jewish courage. It was 1948, in front of a room just like this one at the General Assembly gathering of the Council of Jewish Federations at the Hilton in Chicago. Golda Meir had come representing the Jewish Agency. She had come to raise funds so that Jews in pre-state Israel could defend themselves against the onslaught of armies ready to destroy them. Golda was nervous. There were no guarantees that she would succeed, and she knew that the lives of Jews in pre-state Israel were on the line. With powerful words, she turned to her audience, and she reminded them of the young boys and girls bearing the burden of having to protect their people. She said they were going to, quote, fight to the very end. If we have arms, we'll fight with those. And if not, we will fight with stones in our hands. Golda's words tapped into a sense of Jewish destiny, of responsibility for each other. They tapped into a pragmatic acknowledgement that if we do not fight for our own existence, even when the fight is lonely or unpopular, then that is the end of the Jewish story. American Jewish leaders that day were inspired by her, and they contributed in unprecedented amounts. They helped that day found the State of Israel, and they changed history. I want to end with a blessing. As we look to the days ahead, may we have the courage to stand up for truth, even when we stand apart. May we have the courage to know our values and to stake everything to defend them. May we meet whatever obstacles come our way in this remarkable journey of Jewish peoplehood with faith, with courage, with love for our mishpacha here in Israel and around the world. As God told Abraham, Al tira, be fearless. Thank you. Am Yisrael.
Please welcome back the chair of the Jewish Federations of North America, Julie Platt.
As we bring the GA to a close, we wanted to bring you one last conversation of inspiration. Cheryl Sandberg is a leader we came to know from afar through Option B and Lean In. But since October 7th, Cheryl has stepped into a new leadership role, giving voice to the victims of October 7th and using her power to cut through the noise. I am honored to call Cheryl a cherished friend, and I ask you to join me in welcoming a heroine for the Jewish people, Cheryl Sandberg. Hi, my friend.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everyone.
Okay, all of us have been deeply impacted by October 7th. You have always been affiliated as a Jew. We met when you were dropping off your children at Camp Ramah, but you are much more engaged, for sure, now. I've told you that you are a born-again Jew. I would love to start with you talking about the path you have been on as a Jewish leader that leads you to being here in this seat today.
Well, I'll start by thanking you for having me and saying what an honor it is to be in a room with the Jewish leaders who matter so much. So thanks to all of you for all you do. You know, I grew up as an affiliated Jew, kind of a weird household. We belonged to a Reform synagogue. We kept kosher. I went to Camp Coleman, big part of my childhood. My parents were very active in the Soviet Jewry movement. So I knew there was anti-Semitism because I marched and did all the things, but I thought anti-Semitism was something that existed in the Soviet Union or in history. Bari asked a really important question. She said, when do you know? When did you know? And if you listen to her speech, which I thought was so brilliant, I was late. My first inkling was on October 7th when my childhood friend Elise Sheck, who's also here, woke me up and said, Israel's at war. And I said, I can't believe it. But what I really couldn't believe is how many times since then I've said I can't believe. I said it when my mother-in-law was at MoMA and a mob of people came in screaming from the river to the sea and then started yelling, this place is run by wealthy Jews. And she and every other visitor were ushered out a side room. I said it just 3 months ago when I dropped my son off in college. And you know, you drop your kid off in college, for those of us who have, and there's the booths for the parents and the students. And one of those booths said, big sign, safety and security for Jewish students. I couldn't believe it. In 2024, I am dropping my kid off at college, and they think they need a booth to tell me my kid's gonna be safe, which obviously means they're not sure he is. And it is what Bari said, our long vacation from history is over. But for me, it's fundamentally changed me, and not in a bad way, but a very good way. And it reminds me, there are differences of my trajectory as a female leader. When I went into business, people said, are you a business person or a woman business person? Are you a business leader or a female business leader? And I had a very clear answer to that when I entered the workforce 30 years ago. I was a business person, and then a business leader. I was not a female business leader because I didn't need the adjective, because it was gonna be fine. My generation was gonna fix all the issues for women. And then I slowly, over the course of my decades in the workforce, realized that was not true and was not happening. And I became a female business leader, and that adjective meant more to me than the noun. And I feel the same way. I remember BBYO retreats of my childhood, and they would ask the question, are you a Jewish American or American Jew? Which part of your identity comes first? And this has definitely changed for me, but since October 7th, I sit on this stage as a different person, in the sense that Jewish is as important a part of my identity as anything else. I am female, I am a business leader, I am an American, and I am a Jew. And I sit on this stage as a proud Zionist and a proud Jew in a way I wouldn't have a year and a half ago.
Cheryl, you said that speaking out about sexual violence that was perpetrated on October 7th and after, and making screams before silence is the most important work of your life. Many people here have watched it. I've watched it. We can't look away. What was the journey to the film and to using your platform and your voice to advocate for the issue of gender-based violence that occurred on October 7th?
So you know this, because you're always part of my journey as my friend, but I had left Meta a year before October 7th with a promise to myself that I was gonna be quiet. Do some nice work in the women's space, not be a public kind of person anymore, and I was really enjoying that. And then after October 7th, the reports started coming out about sexual violence. The Free Press covered them, Jake Tapper covered them, Israeli news covered them, and really no one else. And the silence was deafening. The women's organizations, all the work we had done together to tell people, we have to believe women. It was as if none of that ever happened. And so I stepped out again, I spoke out, and I wrote an op-ed, and I helped organize an event at the UN. You helped me so much with that. And what I was trying to say to everyone is that this is a really important moment in time for the history of women. Not just of Jews, but for women. So when you think about war, for the longest time, all throughout our history, women's bodies were part of the spoils of war. You got the land, you got the gold, you got the women. And then, only 30 years ago, in the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, the DRC, the world stepped up, women's groups stepped up, human rights groups stepped up, and they said no. Rape is going to be punished, prosecuted as a war crime, as a crime against humanity, and it was. But if in this moment, Our politics make us so blind that we are denying or facing with silence rape, clear rape, of victim after victim after victim that was murdered. We lose too much. And so I was trying to say exactly one thing, which is that rape is not resistance, ever, under any circumstances. So I said that, and the denial just kept happening. And then Jeffrey Gettleman wrote a very important piece for the New York Times. I'm sure you all read it. Jeffrey Gettleman is a Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times journalist who has covered rape in war for 30 years. Won a Pulitzer for this work. Never been attacked before. And all of a sudden, that article was just attacked. And I realized people are still just not believing this. And so I went to Israel, I made this film, the incredibly talented people who really made it. I was just the interviewer in it. And we were trying to give anyone an opportunity to bear witness. They can see for themselves. If you don't believe it, please watch. Due to the generosity of Carol and Joey Lowe, who financed the whole thing, it's available for you on YouTube for free to anyone. If you don't believe, watch. Just watch. Watch Amit Susanna. You can see the video of her being kidnapped, and then she will tell you what happened to her. And then watch the people that had to process the bodies of the women that were raped before they were murdered, that screamed before their silence. Sorry. Which is how we named the film. These are the screams before the silence of death. We've been very focused on college campuses. We've had over 100 screenings of the film on college campuses this fall. Hillel and Adam, thank you. You've done a great job. And a ton of these screenings have been done by AEPI, Jewish fraternity. And I got a chance to meet some of them at Berkeley just a few weeks ago. There's something about young Jewish men on campus, speaking out for Israel, speaking out against terror, and speaking out on sexual violence that gives me hope and should give all of us hope.
So Cheryl, you just talked about the young warriors we have, but I know many of us are discouraged by the fact that young, educated people on college campuses are denying everything you are saying. How'd we get here? What do we do about the fact that young, educated people forget the rest of the people who have denied the sexual violence that you've expressed? The young campus, college-educated kids screaming to globalize the Intifada.
I'm not an expert, and there's a lot of ways we've gotten here, but I think one clear way we got here is not really understanding what was happening to education, and not just at the college level, but K through 12. For 20 years, in thousands of classrooms around our country and the world, and including today, as we sit here, kids are marching into classrooms and being taught a history that is not true. This happened in my children's school, and this is so heartbreaking for me. Just a few weeks ago, they played a video to a class, a religion class, called Zionism Explained. This video is produced by Turkish state media. It starts with the beginning, and it doesn't say Jews are the ancestral occupants of this land along with other people. It starts with that it's against the Jewish religion to have a state, and they shouldn't even have one in the first place. Then it goes to, in 1948, the Jews declared themselves a state and attacked all their neighbors. As if they just woke up one day and were like, I know what we'll do. We'll have war on all of our neighbors, unprovoked. And it goes on and on and on. That is playing in our kids' school. And so this is going to be hard because education's a very decentralized problem. We are going to have to go, all of us here, state by state, county by county, school district by school district, school by school, and fix the K through 12 curriculum. We have to do it. And we really have to pay attention to what's going on college campuses. Someone said to me, and Bari talked about this, that we were endowing buildings and they were endowing chairs. We got to pay attention to the curriculum. And I think, and this is really important, and I know a little bit controversial, we need to stay engaged. There are voices out there that are saying we can't be part of these elite institutions. Julie, you've remained a leader and an important leader at the University of Pennsylvania. And what you've said is to quote Ann Richards, who says, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu for lunch. We need to stay engaged. We have to stay engaged. And I now have 2 children in college. The thing that's hard, I think, as parents is we need our kids to be part of this. We need our kids in those schools, in the hard schools. We need our kids at Columbia and Berkeley and the Ivy League schools that don't seem to understand this so that their voices can be heard.
Political support for Israel is on everyone's mind, particularly of late. You have told me that part of being born again is you are thinking very clearly about your support. How are you thinking about it now?
So there's an old saying in US politics, no matter what else, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you have to do 2 things to run for office: kiss babies and support Israel. Those days are gone. Gone. Support for Israel is eroding on both sides of the aisle, particularly in the youth and particularly in the Democratic Party, but I think it's very important we all understand this, and I know you all do. It is eroding across the aisle, every aisle. And we can't let that happen. We cannot let this happen. I'm an affiliated Democrat. I've had many people say to me, how can you stay a Democrat? Well, my answer is to remember that the part of the Democratic Party that doesn't support us is not the mainstream, that there is a Democratic Party we can keep. I want a Richie Torres, Josh Shapiro Democratic Party. Right? If you're having a bad day, go on Instagram, look at 2 Instagrams, look at Richie Torres and Julie's son, Jonah Platt, and you will feel better. It works for me every time. But that Democratic Party exists if we stay in. If we don't stay in, we will have a situation where Israel is only supported by one party, and that is unacceptable. We also have to remember that the fight against anti-Semitism has to be nonpartisan. And this also has been very hard for me as someone who's always been on the kind of progressive left, that for a long time I've understood anti-Semitism on the right. It's Tree of Life, it's Charlottesville, it's neo-Nazis. I hate it, I abhor it, but I understand it. What surprised me was the anti-Semitism on the left, that it seemed more accepted. But then I remind myself, it is still on the far left. And we have to make sure we stay engaged to keep it there. We also have to keep the dialogue open. Amy Spitalnik did a webinar on anti-Semitism with AOC. You would have thought she committed some crime. Everyone went nuts. People said, how can you give AOC a platform? And AOC got her endorsement from the Socialists of America pulled. But you know what? That conversation's really important. Because if we're going to fight anti-Semitism, we need to fight anti-Semitism with everyone. And you will never convince, we are not going to convince anyone of something by not talking to them. That has never worked and will never work. And also, despite our Talmudic tradition of arguing with ourselves and each other, we need to stay united. We are Zionists, whether we're Republicans or Democrats. We are pro-Israel. We stand against anti-Semitism. We stand against all forms of hate, no matter where we are politically, and I think that is so, so, so critical in this moment.
Thanks, Cheryl. We've all learned a lot this year, some things we didn't want to learn, but we have now. We've all had experiences we never thought we would have. What have you learned in the past year that you have not already talked about that you did not know before?
About a month after October 7th, I went on a walk with my friend Katie. It's a very common thing I do. Katie and I walk all the time and down the little suburban streets of Northern California. And we were just doing our normal catch up, and then what came out of my mouth was, will you hide me? Every single person in this room knows what I mean. Katie had no idea. She was like, what are you talking about? And so I explained. I explained that during the Holocaust, there were righteous Jews and righteous non-Jews who hid Jews. Some of them died. Some of them lived, but they risked their lives to hide Jews. And I said, will you hide me? I started crying. She started crying. She said, it's never going to come to this, but I will hide you. That change in our lives takes us to a place where we have to be so vulnerable, and I'm not used to being that vulnerable. This audience is filled with people who are philanthropists, who are used to giving their time and energy and passion to help others. We're not used to needing this help, but we need it. And Van Jones, who's been so outspoken for us, thank you, Van, right? He's said to me, and he's said publicly, Jews have to figure out how to build the muscle of asking for help. We also have to build the muscle of taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves. The person I think is most eloquent on this is Sheila Katz, and she speaks so beautifully about how yes, let's applaud for Sheila. We have built the muscle of standing in solidarity with others, but we do not have the muscle of standing up for ourselves. And I realized how true this was. I was writing a speech for a unity march against anti-Semitism in the Bay Area. And I wanted to offer a really compelling reason why people who aren't Jewish should care about anti-Semitism. So I went where we all go. I looked at history. I said, if they come after the Jews, they're going to come after you. I went to that old poem. I said, historically, a rise in anti-Semitism is a harbinger of democratic breakdown. And then I realized that the fact that I thought I had to say that was a big part of the problem. Because we can't just speak out against anti-Semitism because they're going to do other bad things. Anti-Semitism is bad in and of itself. And we have to be willing to say that. And again, I think in order to say that, in order to reach out to our friends who aren't Jewish and say, I'm scared, in order to stand up for ourselves, in order to ask for help, we're going to have to be more vulnerable than any of us have been in a long time. But I think that vulnerability is going to be critical to getting us through this.
One last question for you, Cheryl. What do you want this group of Jewish leaders to think about as they walk out of this room, and what is your challenge to us as we go forth?
I guess I would say we should all be more like Julie. Everyone should be more like Julie. I don't know. I know this because she's such a dear friend, but this woman has barely slept in her own house since October 7th, and she has gone community to community, reminding us that we can stay together. And I just want to, if everyone can join me in applauding Julie.
Thank you, Cheryl. Keep going.
Yes!
Okay.
For Julie.
No. Oh. Thank you. Okay, that was totally not why I asked that question, Cheryl.
I want to be more like my parents. I sit on this stage as the proud daughter of Adele and Joel Sandberg. They're here with me today, a good Jewish daughter. I brought them, and my father-in-law. Thank you. But I think we also have to be really strategic. Really strategic. We have to care about what people think. We need people to understand Zionism, we need people to understand Israel, and we need people to understand anti-Semitism. And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to be smart about it. Psychologists have studied for a long time what makes people think something and what makes people change their mind. And in the face of uncertainty, what people do is they follow their role models or the people that seem like they're like them. Psychologists call this social proof. We just had, interestingly enough, the largest, I think, real-time experiment on this ever, which is vaccinations. There was a huge group of people who did not want to get vaccinated. Eventually they did. Why? Because at the beginning they thought people like them weren't getting vaccinated, and then they saw people like them get vaccinated. And so when we talk about anti-Semitism, we have to be honest that it is a very scary problem. But we also need to remind ourselves and others that it's small and fringe. Because if we start saying it's mainstream, it can become mainstream. That's what social science tells us. And the good news for us is it is not. It is not. A lot of the anti-Semitism we see is real, and that's the very far right, the very far left. We need to stomp that out. But a lot of it is not understood, and we can do that education and keep people with us. And most people are with us. Most people are not anti-Semitic. I was in Israel filming Screams Before Silence, and I asked my friend Adi, who lives there, how are you? How are you? And she said, I'm Israeli. We are more broken than a people can be, and we are stronger than a people can be. I really understand that. I sit here today, honored to be on this stage, honored to sit next to my friend Julie, feeling more vulnerable and more scared than I've felt in my life, but also stronger, more connected to this community, more connected to the resilience that we have. And the thing about us is we know how to do the work. We do. Okay, this is really cheesy. I used to do this when I taught aerobics. Bear with me, is that all right? Everyone, raise your hand as high as you can. As high as you can, as high as you can. Now an inch higher. Look at that. When we think we've done all we can do more, and we do, and we have. Bari has said so beautifully that our identity as Jews needs to be more rooted in Sinai than Auschwitz, and that is true. Because being Jewish is a wonderful thing. It is a tradition of charity, of caring about other people, of knowledge, of study, of family, of community. Last January, my daughter, I asked her what she wanted for her birthday. She wasn't particularly affiliated. She said she wanted a Jewish star. She's worn it every day since, and so have I, and so have my two other daughters. My middle daughter is president of the Jewish Affinity Club at her school. She wasn't a member a year and a half ago. I am born again, and that has had some beautiful moments. I am part of this community in a different way. Thank you, Julie, for leading me here. And I am truly honored, as Sheila taught me to say, to stand in community with this incredible room of Jewish leaders. To all of you, kol hakavod.
You are already thanking Cheryl, as I would ask you to do. Stay standing. I want to first express my gratitude to each and every one of you for being here. I thank you for what you have done and what we will all do together. And now please join us as we conclude the GA with the singing of Hatikva.
We are gonna perform 2 more songs for you. It has been a year since we survived the October 7 massacre. And our homeland, our country is still at war, and our hostages is still in captivity. And we pray every day for their safety and for their return home. Sometimes we don't know how to express our feelings or even understand what we feel. And good luck, we have music to help us with it. This song is called Giant Wheel. This is the last time we can say goodbye. I can find any air to fill up our world. All I can is look what's left in your eyes, 'cause you won't listen to what you understand. I can't use my words so you believe what is real. Like we're on a giant wheel, stuck where we can see everything. As the world stops, we see pictures of our love, presented like on highways, with tears running down, but nothing's changed. People next to me on this lonely plane, do they know? Do they care that you broke my heart? Till the captain says that we're landing soon, as the time comes again for us to take off. I can't use my words so you believe what is real. Like we're on a giant wheel, stuck where we can see everything. As the world stops, we see pictures of our love, presented like on highways, with tears running down, but nothing's changed. I can't use my words so you believe what is real. Like we're on a giant wheel, stuck where we can see everything. As the world stops, we see pictures of our love, presented like on highways, with tears running down, but nothing's changed. We're stuck on a giant wheel. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're gonna do one more song for you. Also, we're called N Border, not Shufuni anymore. N Border. You can look us up on Instagram and follow us. We would love to follow you back. The song is dedicated for you.
אין לי יותר עוד סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות, בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן שישנה לי. החדשות זורמות בינתיים, איש אחד חצה 6 יבשות על אופניים, זמר שר את הפזמון, המילים שהוא כתב, אין ההמנון של ההמון, קפה ראשון צועק עליי שעון, מתחיל עוד יום והנה כבר נגמר, ובלילות מגלגל לי אשליות בניירות של חשבונות. אין לי יותר עוד סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות, בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן שישנה לי. אולי זה כבר בפתח, ואיכשהו קיבלתי את הסימן, עכשיו אפילו הירח נראה פתאום קרוב, יכול לתפוס אותו ביד. אדם לבד מול טנק נשאר פיסת היסטוריה, אחי לשים בובה מצפי לטרויה. אין לי יותר עוד סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות, בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן שישנה לי. אין לי יותר עוד סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות, בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן שישנה לי.
There's a whole world out there waiting for me. I don't want life pass me by without doing something that really matters.
אין לי יותר עוד סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות, בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן שישנה לי. עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי. סבלנות, אולי עולם שלם עדיין שם עוד מצפה לי, ואני לא רוצה רק לחכות למות בלי שעשיתי משהו קטן. Thank you very much. תודה.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
עם ישראל חי. אמן.
עם ישראל חי!